This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeff Crouere, guest hosting for this edition of the Glazov Gang. I'm host of Ringside Politics and columnist and author and big fan of Jamie Glazov and, of course, Annie Cyrus. And it's an honor to be guest hosting for this program today. We have a great guest who's going to be joining us. But first, I wanted to give a shout out to one of our sponsors. So if you want the best one-on-one fitness training in the LA area and to get in the best shape of your life, call James Richardson now. And here's the number, 541-331-0252. And you can also get a special online training with him from anywhere in the world. So that's James Richardson, 541-331-0252. And we could all use that. No one better than James Richardson. So we thank him for his support. Okay, well, I'm very pleased to bring on today as our special guest, someone I've had the pleasure of interviewing several times on my Ringside Politics radio show. And he's got a great story to tell. He's a White House stenographer for 15 years. And he gathered some incredible information during that time. And he has now written 4 books, including 15 Years of Deplorable and the Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden. We welcome Mike McCormick to the Glazov Gang. And Mike, how are you?
Great, Jeff. It's great to be on with you now.
Yeah, well, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your courage. Boy, coming forward and telling the truth about Joe Biden, that takes a lot of courage. And thank you for doing that. Give us, our viewers, a little background into how you got to working as a White House stenographer.
Right, exactly. Well, I started in 2002, so I worked for 3 presidents. I worked for President George W. Bush, I worked for President Barack Obama, and I worked 1 year with President Trump. There was a short period of time in the middle where I did another job, and then I came back to the White House in 2010 and worked for Obama and then mostly Biden. And so I've seen a lot of the sort of the progression of how the press has covered up for the White House, especially in the Obama years, attacked President Trump viciously, more than anything I'd ever seen. And, you know, kind of how they fumbled around with the Bush years. So there was a lot there. And we've really seen we're coming to a new era in media, especially out of the White House. President Trump is changing everything. It's a very interesting time to be in America and consuming political news.
Okay, so you saw up close and personal George W. Bush, Barack Obama, a little bit of President Trump. But when you were working for the Obama administration, you were really assigned to the vice president's office, Mike?
Yeah, right. So back then, Joe Biden was extremely ambitious. He wanted to be the president. And behind the scenes, he was working really hard to do it. And so what that meant was he was wanting as much press as he could. He was so aggressive about getting press. And my job was with the press office. So anytime he got interviewed or was on a foreign trip and was meeting with foreign leaders and doing speeches, I had to be there to record it. I did a lot of phone calls, phone interviews with them. And so, and he was a very unpredictable guy. He had a lot of energy back then. And we all saw what happened to him when he became president. But before he was president in 2020, I was on Fox News and I basically said, look, he does not have the physical stamina or the mental awareness to be president. This was September of 2020. And, you know, I knew, I could tell then that he was a huge
let me ask you, I mean, when did you first notice that he was in physical and mental decline? During his tenure as vice president?
No, it was after. He was fine until probably about 2019. And I could really notice when he was campaigning in 2020, 2019, 2020. I could just see the way he spoke on the as he campaigned, as he was moving around, the physical activities that he did. He really lost a step. He was, that's what I said on the show. It was with Laura Ingraham. He's a shell of his former self, and that was none of the White House media picked up on that.
Okay.
Fox News ran it, and it's not like CNN called me. It's not like Jake Tapper called me and said, "Hey, we saw on Fox News."
Well,
No, Jake Tapper's out there with a book saying, "Oh yeah, he was fading." They didn't want to know that. They covered up for him.
but
So I was
Mike,
out there not covering up for him.
you were speaking the truth, but a lot of us were watching and seeing a guy in decline, and the media was saying, "What are you talking about? I mean, you're making things up. It's a phony narrative." And of course, we were all right.
Right.
And the media covered up, and that goes back to your time as the stenographer working with the press. I mean, and getting all the press for Biden.
That's right.
Was the press supportive of him? Easy to work with? I mean, they were in his corner, right?
When he was president, they covered up for him. I mean, I remember CBS News, Norah O'Donnell. She got the first big Joe Biden interview during the Super Bowl when he first got in there in 2021. And he'd only been in there a couple of weeks. And I remember watching her do a promo for it. We've got a 20-minute interview with the president of the United States, Joe Biden. And I'd done those Super Bowl interviews before. They are usually at least 20 minutes, if not more. That's a really big audience. That's a prime time interview opportunity for a president to get his message out. When they did finally the interview with her, it was only 12 minutes long. So they had to probably behind the scenes edit a lot out that they never talked about, but they only ran 12 minutes of Joe Biden. And, this is the same CBS that later was covering up for the, Vice President Harris's fumblings on the 60-minute telecast. Right. So they were doing it from that point on. I mean, as soon as he got in, it was obvious to me, based on how CBS News, Norah O'Donnell specifically, was doing this cover up for him.
So back to your time when you were the stenographer and you were witnessing all this, as you wrote in one of your books, you were deplorable while you were doing all this. So you really sort of had to hide your political leanings.
That's not what it was. I only had to hide my political leanings when Trump came out. There wasn't much politics to my job. I worked as a contractor. I worked for George Bush. I worked for Barack Obama. I was not in a position to be political. I didn't want to be political. I didn't watch the news. I didn't have, I got to see what was happening in front of me. And what I saw every day in and day out, whether it was with Bush or Obama, was the media would present their narrative, and then there would be what really happened right in front of me. Right. With Obama, it was almost like worshiping him.
Right.
So it was extremely biased in his favor. Whereas with Bush, it was biased against him. When Trump came in, it was viciously biased against him. I mean, it was shocking how biased.
I think they hated him, Mike, from the day he came down the escalator till today. They still hate him. So, your experience is so unique because you saw all those different presidents and you saw how the different media coverage, as you say. But you write in your book about wanting the Joe Biden, the case to impeach Joe Biden. And you saw some things when you were working with him when he was vice president that you found to be very disturbing, and some involved his son Hunter. So explain that to our audience if you could.
Right. Well, so I wrote in 2019, self-published a book called 15 Years of Deplorable White House Memoir. And then when I saw that Hunter Biden had been interviewed and was talking about this crack addiction he had, and I realized that I'd been lied to the entire time I'd worked for Joe Biden, because he never talked about Hunter struggling or anything. He always was this exemplary young man. And I was like, wait a minute. So I started looking. I wrote a book called Joe Biden Unauthorized. That came out in 2020, just as he was in the middle of campaigning. And it also came out just as the lockdowns hit. So it was, no one really talked about it. And then I got a hold, because I wrote that book, I got a hold of the Hunter Biden laptop in 2021 in the fall. And that's where I really started to dig into who Joe Biden really was. I was able to go into the laptop, and because I traveled with Joe Biden, I knew where he was at certain points in time. Say in April 2014, we had gone to Ukraine. And I went in the Hunter Biden laptop and looked at the email traffic, and there was Joe Biden committing crimes in there. And so I started cataloging that in my Substack, Midnight in a Laptop of Good and Evil. And that eventually led me to get the Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden published with Bombardier Books.
Can you go over with our audience some of the crimes that you have identified that Joe Biden committed, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is, so I've written 2 books. Both these books are about Joe Biden and the crimes he committed. The Almost Insurmountable Evil is about Joe Biden's crimes that sort of led to the Wuhan pandemic. This book, The Case to Impeach and Imprison, is about his crimes at Burisma mostly. So one specific crime, and the reason I'm saying that is because just yesterday, President Trump pardoned Devon Archer.
Right.
Devon Archer figures largely into both books. He's a central figure in what the Biden crime family is doing.
Let's start, Mike, with Burisma. And I think a lot of people know this is a company that had been paying Hunter Biden $83,000 a month to serve on the board, right? And Hunter Biden did not know the language, did not know the country, did not know the business.
Yeah, that's right. So April 2014, the crime that I witnessed, and I told the FBI this, and I've told investigators from Congressional House Oversight Committee and Senate Homeland Security Governmental Affairs Committee this. I was on Air Force 2 flying into Ukraine when Jake Sullivan, who was a senior administration official, he was Joe Biden's, he was then his national security advisor, his vice presidential national security advisor. He came to the back of the plane, and me doing my job meant I recorded a transcript with him as a national security advisor, senior administration official, unidentified. But I knew who he was. I was standing right next to him. Well, in that discussion with the press asked him, what assistance is Vice President Biden bringing for Ukraine for energy? And Jake Sullivan answered, well, he's bringing 4 things. 2 of them directly benefited Burisma. And at the time, no one on the plane, in the press and me, knew that Hunter Biden was secretly on the board of Burisma. But he was. He had been in a meeting with Joe Biden in his West Wing office just 3 days before that trip left with Devon Archer. The 2 of them were together, and they met with them. And then emails showed that they were talking about their Burisma, signing him up for the board, and also doing this investment in a company called Metabiota, which is another part of the grift that they did in Ukraine. So that's when I notified the FBI. I said, look, I'm a witness to the crime. And the crime was malfeasance. Jake Sullivan came to the back of the plane at Joe Biden's direction and basically admitted that they were bringing assistance that would benefit his family, specifically his son, who was already secretly on the board of Burisma. Right. And because I knew who Jake Sullivan was, he wasn't anonymous to me. I told the FBI, I said, the guys in this crime are Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan. Well, they never got back to me. And the House Oversight investigators didn't do anything with it. That's why I had to write that book, because, they didn't do anything. So I put it in the book.
Let me ask you this. The FBI until recently has been under the control of, Christopher Wray. And of course, he's not going to do anything. But the House has been, under the control of the Republicans. And even under Republican control, they did nothing, Mike?
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't even They didn't even ask Devin. They had Devin Archer and Hunter Biden in for interviews, and they didn't ask him about the information that I gave them. And I was, and all they did was they wrote a really lame report about it, which to me just shows I don't really have a lot of confidence in Congress. But now we have a new FBI director, Kash Patel. We have a new U.S. attorney in D.C. named Ed Martin. I've already reached out to Ed Martin and told him specifically, I'm a witness. You should have me in front of a grand jury. I can be a witness in an investigation of Joe Biden. I told him specifically, and I've emailed into the webmaster for that organization.
Okay.
I haven't heard back. I have yet to hear back from the organization. I emailed U.S. Attorney and webmaster, and we haven't heard back. So
that's disturbing to me, Mike. It really is
right.
that you've not heard back, and that's why I'm glad we're able to share your story on this fine
exactly.
program.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And so, I'll keep you posted if they do get back.
right.
The hope is they should. I think they're very, very, very busy, and Ed Martin hasn't been confirmed yet. The Senate hasn't confirmed him. So when he gets confirmed,
But
and he gets his.
How many people are an eyewitness to a crime committed by a former president?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they never get to be the witness. And I went to there was a U.S. There was a special counsel, U.S. Attorney David Weiss from Delaware was named as a special counsel by Joe Biden's Department of Justice. Well, all he did was deflect the investigation. Right. I got in touch with him, sent him a copy of my book, sent him a copy of witness stuff that I'd done, the copies of what I sent the FBI. I never heard back. I went to the Hunter Biden trial and got myself into the press declaration they made. They made a brief press statement. At the end of the press statement, I called out to him. I said, I was a witness to Joe Biden crime in Air Force Two. I need to be a witness in front of the grand jury. And they just ran away. They literally ran away from me. So that guy needs to be investigated because he's obstructed justice.
Yeah.
He committed obstruction of justice by not.
That was so widespread. I mean, there was such a cover up. There was such a Department of Injustice. They were weaponized against Trump, covering up for Obama and Biden. Now maybe we can get to some truth, and I hope you're going to hear from them. I hope we're going to hear a lot of information that has been withheld from us. Let me ask you about this. All of us saw that speech he gave before the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, where he bragged, about withholding the, what was it, $1.5 billion loan guarantee until they fired that prosecutor that happened to be looking into Burisma and Hunter Biden, and they weren't going to get the money until they fired the prosecutor. That's a crime, is it not, Mike?
Absolutely, that's a crime. And I was on that trip when he made that. So he did that speech in 2018. He was sort of in front of this group, but he was talking about a trip that he took to Ukraine in December of 2015. And I was on that trip. And what happened was, this is kind of serious. And I put this in my book, The Case to Impeach and Imprison. There was a video that was made of that trip that was made by the White House. Joe Biden does this, remember I told you he was aggressive about getting press coverage. He wanted press coverage of that trip. So they made a special video and they put it on YouTube. And it shows him walking down when he arrives in Ukraine on the beginning of that trip and greeting somebody at the bottom of the stairs. The guy he greeted was Vitaly Klitschko, who was the mayor of Moscow. He's a former world heavyweight boxer. Vitaly Klitschko at the time was secretly in the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer. And they had just had a Burisma board meeting in Dubai. And Joe Biden, Hunter Biden's testified to this. So did Devin Archer testified to this, that Joe Biden called into that board meeting. So the question is, did he call into the board meeting and say, I want Vitaly Klitschko to be my greeter when I get off the plane in Kiev at 2015? So this is just more evidence. Joe Biden was up to his ears in covering it up. This is the level of corruption that was in Ukraine. The U.S. embassy was involved in it. And Devin Archer's known about this all along, and he better start going out and telling about it in testimony under oath, so that we can put the criminals that were involved. It's a wide conspiracy. He's the inside guy.
It just goes to show you, not only is the Biden family corrupt, but the government of Ukraine is corrupt, is it not?
Oh, thoroughly. I mean, Klitschko was president then. He was mayor of Moscow then. He's still the mayor of Moscow. He's like the number 2 politician behind Zelensky. So if Zelensky goes, who comes out? Klitschko? Then we've been giving him billions of dollars. Joe Biden gave them hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes during the time that he was vice president, and certainly during his presidency. And it's disgusting. And so many innocent people died in that war, basically to cover Joe Biden's crimes. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, it is absolutely something that infuriates me as well. And I think millions of Americans. Let's talk about something else you said that you've studied, and that is another lie, and that is the Hunter Biden laptop. Of course, we heard during the 2020 campaign that it was, Russian disinformation. We had these 51 national security so-called experts say it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. When I saw excerpts of that video and photos and information, it certainly looked authentic to me. When you looked at it, Mike, did it look authentic to you, or did it look like Russian disinformation?
Oh, no, it was absolutely authentic, because I'm in it. I'm in that. There are some things that I did in my work product that are part of that emails. Like, there was a trip we took to Moscow in 2011, and there was emails between Hunter and his aunt and about the pool reports from that trip. And they talk about the stenographer. And then there was one time where I made a mistake in a transcript, and I sent out a transcript by mistake that didn't have the blind copy number. So my name showed up in the send list, and that transcript sort of passed through into the laptop, because all of Hunter's sort of his team and Joe's advisors that were back and forth with Hunter talked about the speech that he made of the transcript. And in this particular case, it happened soon after Beau Biden died. So it was like July of 2015. And Joe Biden was out there. It was basically, I think it was a gathering of I think it was the Equal Rights Association. It was the sort of a gay promotion group. Mm-hmm. And he was joking away with them. And it was like he was just laughing and joking and talking about, when he helped Barack Obama get gay marriage passed and all this stuff. And it wasn't like he was terribly overwrought with grief or anything. So it was a really weird transcript. I talk about that in the Case of Impeachment. So yeah, it was weird. I mean, so I'm in that. I know from what I saw on that laptop, it was 100% correct.
What kind of guy has that kind of incriminating information on a laptop, drops it off at a computer repair shop, and then never goes and picks it up? Do you think he was strung out on crack and didn't realize that he had dropped it off there?
I think deep down he wanted to get caught. I think he was a guy who was really strung out on crack, but I think deep down, I think he just was. I think, for a long, long time, that family was doing crimes and covering for Joe. And I don't know if it was what they were comfortable with. I mean, clearly he had terrible issues of guilt and was just doing this drug abuse to, kind of ease the pain kind of thing. I think deep down inside him, he didn't want to do it. Same with his sister. Yeah. She was, racked with sort of a really self-destructive behavior on the two of them. So, whatever it was in that family wasn't healthy. And it, he just kind of had it. It was like a cry for help.
And we hear that he's sober, but yet again, we hear that somebody left cocaine in the White House, and a lot of people have suspected it was Hunter. And that investigation mysteriously went away, Mike. So
yeah,
who knows? Right.
Well, I hope Dan Bongino can get to the bottom of that. I think he knows how to do that.
Right. All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, I want to talk about your new book, which also goes into the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And I'd like to explore those connections as well with our prolific author and former White House stenographer, Mike McCormick. Jeff Crouere here for the Glazov Gang. We'll be right back.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Well, I'll tell you, go to mypillow.com or mystore.com, and you can use that promo code GG21. Get a discount of up to 60% off of all the amazing products. It helps both, of course, the Glazov Gang and the great Mike Lindell. Also, and if you want one of a kind handmade art, be sure to go to Live Up to Freedom Studio. That's LUTFstudio.com. and purchase resin art pieces by our great, fabulous producer, Annie Cyrus. You can use the promo code Glazov to get special discounts there at the great studio and get some amazing items. All right, so we're back with our special guest, Mike McCormick, and wanted to talk about your latest book, Mike, and the connections that you made with the Catholic Church, which has really been struggling, as we know, under the leadership of Pope Francis, who just survived a health crisis. But the church has problems with vocations, problems with people who have left the church, bankruptcies down here in the New Orleans Archdiocese. There's a bankruptcy that the Archdiocese is dealing with. So it's going on all over the country with the pedophilia crisis that is still hanging over the church, and the fact that they shuffled these priests around. And of course, you've got a lot of left-wing Catholic groups that have been helping with the migration invasion that we've had under Joe Biden.
Right.
So tell us about your new book, Mike.
Well, it's, it was interesting because I've been talking about what happened. So the title of the book is An Almost Insurmountable Evil: How Obama's Deep State Defiled the Catholic Church and Executed the Wuhan Pandemic. So what happened was, about a year ago, I started going back to church. I was born a Catholic, baptized young, went to Catholic school till 6th grade, left the church after college for several decades, but last year decided, I want to get back to it. And so as I was going to church regularly, I was on with Alex Jones on his InfoWars show. And I was watching after I was on and watching him talk about something. He's talking about this sense of this overwhelming evil. And at the time, President Trump was going through this horrific lawfare. And it just seemed like the left and the Joe Biden administration was just putting obstacles in front of us that were almost insurmountable. And so I thought to myself, I said, what was the most evil thing that I remember in the Biden White House? What was the most evil thing? It was Joe Biden's relationship with a guy named Theodore McCarrick. Theodore McCarrick was a Catholic cardinal, very high in the Vatican, a good friend of Pope Francis. He was a rapist of altar boys and seminarians. He was an evil man, and he'd been doing that for a long time. And that came out in 2018. They finally caught up to him. And so I put together this book. I started looking at it, and I said, what did McCarrick do in the Obama White House? I looked in their visitor logs, and it was like seeing evil right in front of me. The amount of times that he visited Joe Biden, and specifically Dennis McDonough, who was a White House chief of staff from 2013 on, and met with Obama, whether it was at a speech or like a party or something, was shocking. And he would not only meet with them, but then he would go to the Vatican and do this sort of diplomacy between the Obama people and the Vatican, especially Pope Francis. It was like he was an operative. And the Vatican, Pope Francis started doing policy for Obama. They helped him with the Iran nuclear deal. They helped him set up this invasion on the southern border, something that Joe Biden put together called the Alliance for Prosperity. They helped him betray China's Catholics by turning the management of the Catholic Church in China over to the Chinese Communist Party, betraying the Chinese underground Chinese Catholics. So there was all this stuff that they did that it just started coming out. It was like evil erupting in front of me.
Right.
The deeper I looked into it, I think McCarrick was a CIA operative. I think the CIA has been in the Vatican manipulating and influencing Vatican policy, and it came to a head with Obama.
Do you think and I want to get back to McCarrick, but do you think the CIA is involved in the selection of popes? I mean, I don't know who was involved in the selection of Pope Francis, but they went off the deep end big time. I mean, they had two good popes in a row, in my view. I'm a Catholic as well. Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, I thought were solid conservatives. Pope Benedict then maybe gets forced into a resignation, maybe gets pressured, he resigns. And then all of a sudden this left-wing radical comes in and takes over and moves the church in a horrible left-wing direction. Mike, was the CIA involved in that?
I think McCarrick was groomed into the CIA as a priest fresh out of seminary. He came down to Washington. He was a New York guy. He spent some time over in Switzerland in a place called St. Galen's, which has now got a really bad reputation with Catholics who follow the predatory sexual activities of the Catholic priests, because there was quite a lot of sort of predatory gay sexual out of that St. Galen's. They call it the St. Galen's Mafia. He spent some time there, and then he came down and went to Catholic University. And at Catholic, he got his doctorate, he got a master's and a doctorate, but he also became a fundraiser. And he started to become a guy who traveled around the world and gave out money. And so he moved quickly up the ladder. The hierarchy of the church made sure he was always getting promoted. And I think it was because they knew that he had contacts in the CIA. And I think he had this predatory sexual activity because he knew he was untouchable.
So you're claiming that you think he's the only one who was tied to the CIA, just this one priest, McCarrick?
No, not the only, because I think Pope Francis was too. Okay. Pope Francis was in Argentina at the time. This is the mid-70s. And so in the mid-70s, Argentina was ruled by a military dictatorship, the hardcore right wing. They were backed by the CIA. Pope Francis is on the record. It's widely reported. He was connected into that right-wing dictatorship. There's a movie called The Two Popes. Hollywood put out a movie in 2020 where it talked about the relationship between Benedict and Francis. Well, they talk in that movie about what Francis did when he was in Argentina. So this hardcore right-wing dictatorship kidnapped priests, the priests that were then sort of going to they were working with communists, the left wing, the unions, the poor people in the slums. Any priests that were with them were seen as communist sympathizers. Some of them got assassinated. Two of them who worked with Bergoglio got kidnapped and tortured by the right wing. And they thought that Bergoglio betrayed them. And they said that publicly. He said, no, I didn't betray you. I was trying to work for your release. And so it's always been a black mark in his background. And it was called Operation Condor that he did. So this is Bergoglio's past, connecting with the CIA. This is the mid-70s.
Right.
Then he goes up the ladder. McCarrick goes up the ladder in Washington. And in 2013, they meet. And Obama sets it up through his chief of staff, Dennis McDonough. Dennis McDonough in October, in on the day after the Benghazi attacks, September 12th, 2012, he gives a speech at Catholic University. McCarrick introduces him. So they have this connection there.
Right.
And of course, he fumbles through the speech and says, well, Benghazi was just, there was a terrible video and that's why it was intact. But most of the speech was about Obama's background with the Catholic Church. And McCarrick was a part of that. Also in, Obama's White House, Catholics was Joe Biden and also Tom Donilon, who was a national security advisor. He was a graduate of Catholic University.
Wow.
So all this happens.
And
a month after that, McCarrick goes down to Argentina. And then another month after that, he goes to Argentina again. So that's December of 2012. It was in February, 6 weeks after that, that Pope Benedict says, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to be Pope anymore. I resign.
So did Pope Benedict get pressured to resign?
I think so.
Did they already groom Francis for this position, set it up fix it, so to speak, so that Francis would be the incoming Pope?
Right. And that's what McCarrick's job was when he was traveling around the world. And in the 90s, he worked for the State Department. He would travel around the world and hand out money. Okay. And that's what the CIA does, right? They go around the world and hand out money. That's what he was doing. And so when it came time to elect the people in the conclave, he wasn't there as a voter, but he could go there and say, hey, we want Bergoglio to be elected. And he did an influence campaign for Bergoglio. I talk about a lot of that in the book.
So why do you think they wanted Francis so much? Because they knew he was a fellow leftist. They knew he would be supportive of their policies. He was pro, obviously, climate change nonsense, pro massive illegal immigration, anti-capitalism. Was that one of the major reasons they liked him so much?
It wasn't just Obama. This is a whole globalist thing. So Obama and Biden and the globalists and the World Economic Forum had this whole plan set up, and they needed morality laundering. That's what they needed the Vatican to do. They needed a pope to go out there and say, oh, they're not illegal immigrants, they're refugees. Right. And they did that all over Europe, and they did it into the United States and the southern border.
Well, it's amazing the damage that has been done to the Catholic Church, Mike, under this pope. And it's just very sad to see, as a lifelong Catholic myself, to see what has happened. It's really sad. And now that you're putting all these pieces together, it's an amazing awakening as to, the forces that were behind this, because many of us have always wondered, how in the world did they pick this guy? He's so terrible. And now some of this makes more sense. Now, let's go back to McCarrick. We talked about him and the crimes he committed. Did Biden know that this guy was a criminal? Did Biden know that he was a pedophile?
I'm sure he did. I mean, there's no hard evidence. Biden, there were allegations against McCarrick by people into the church throughout the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And Biden was a senator that whole time. And he was a Catholic senator. And McCarrick was moving up the ladder. McCarrick was going around the world with the State Department. Biden was the senator who's in charge of the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He's in charge of the State Department. So he would have known McCarrick. They were buddies in D.C. McCarrick was friends with all the Democratic Catholics and a lot of the Republican Catholics too. So yeah, Biden knew, and he, I think, his guys, the Donilon brothers, were all his old time operatives. They're Catholic guys too. And, the CIA was run by Catholics. Michael Hayden at the end of the Bush years was Catholic. He was replaced by Panetta, who was Catholic. And then John Brennan came in, and there's, some speculation he's a Catholic. It's not clear, but he's kind of an Irish Catholic name guy from New Jersey. So he could have been a Catholic too.
I had heard he was a Muslim. So
yeah, there's a rumor out there like that too. Yeah, we don't know.
Who knows? But let's talk about that. So Joe Biden has been, characterized as a devout Catholic, And, there's a big show of him going to church regularly and so forth. And I'm wondering, how does that equate? This is a guy who is extremely pro abortion. How can you be so radically pro abortion and be considered a devout Catholic, Mike?
He was asked that a lot, and the way he answered it was he just separated the policy from his faith. He said, I go and pray in church, but I'm a Democrat when I have to vote. I'm going to vote for the Democratic Party. And that's basically his statement.
So that's very convenient, right? He's sort of like a cafeteria Catholic, sort of, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And, he, according to what you're saying, knew very well that this guy was a criminal, yet was palling around with him and giving him access to his high office. So he certainly wasn't doing what he could to clean up the Catholic Church, just the opposite.
Oh, the exact opposite. And one thing I did, I looked through the Hunter Biden laptop for McCarrick, and his name doesn't come up. So it was Joe Biden's connection with McCarrick, not Hunter's. McCarrick had a lot of connection to Georgetown University. Hunter was a adjunct professor at Georgetown University while he was doing this bereavement grift. So there's a lot of Joe Biden connection into Georgetown, and McCarrick would have connected with him there too.
All of this is just amazing. What a fraud. I mean, the image of Joe Biden as being a, great average guy, average Joe. He's working for the working class. I mean, he's someone who cares about the plight of average Americans. Just the opposite, devout Catholic. The reality is just the opposite as far as, who his connections were, what his beliefs were. I guess all of that now is still needs to be exposed, which is why I'm glad you're writing your books. But I think the more people realize about this, the more upset they'll become that this man was our vice president for 8 years and then our president for 4 years, and he's never been brought to justice. Mike, do you think he'll ever be brought to justice?
I hope so. That's why this Devon Archer thing is important. Devon Archer played a big role in a lot of this. They've got to do an investigation. He's got to be an interview witness under oath that tells the truth about everything that Joe Biden knew and Hunter Biden knew. Because Joe Biden was at the heart of it. One of the things that happened with the child so this is 2014. Joe Biden Barack Obama has gone to the Vatican in March of 2014. As soon as he comes out of the Vatican meeting with Pope Francis, all of a sudden, all these kids start showing up at the southern border. It's called the Unaccompanied Minor Crisis of 2014. At the time, one of the places where they were coming from was Honduras. Honduras had a president then named Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was smuggling cocaine in the United States by the ton. The CIA knew it. The Department of Defense knew it. The Obama-Biden administration knew it. The DEA had this guy's brother on tape saying, we're smuggling drugs with the government and no one can stop us. And that was in 2014. All of a sudden, all these kids start showing up. So what does Joe Biden and Barack Obama do? They get McCarrick in there for all these meetings. They bring the presidents of 3 small countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, to the White House, and they announced something called the Alliance for Prosperity. And they gave $500 million of our taxpayer money to this drug smuggling, human trafficking guy from Honduras who was sponsored by the Sinaloa cartel. They knew all that, and they gave him our money, and the Catholic Church was part of it. There are rape trees along the southern border right now because of what Pope Francis, Theodore McCarrick, Joe Biden, Dennis McDonough, and Barack Obama did. There are rape trees there for the crimes they did with the Alliance for Prosperity.
Instead of stopping illegal immigration, stopping child trafficking, they accelerated it. They knew it was going on. They enabled it, empowered it. They funded it, and then claimed that they were doing something about it, which was actually another lie. They're just making it much worse. I mean, how many? We heard during Joe Biden's term, there were like 350,000 missing children.
Right. And
You
so,
got to think the
so that,
worst of what happened to those children.
yeah,
Right, Mike?
right. And so what happened was that started in 2014, 2016, but then Trump gets elected. They didn't expect that. That was the shock to the system. The globalists and Pope Francis and all the Obama people didn't expect Trump. And he comes in and says, we're putting up a wall. We're going to put up a border wall. And he stopped working with the cartels. He stopped giving them money. And so they panicked. And that's when they put together the fake pandemic that had to get Joe Biden back in. And as soon as he got back in, they exploded the southern border with this immigration crisis
All
that
right.
eventually we found out about and
We
said,
just have a
stop.
few minutes, so let's tie the connection with the pandemic. So, who are you alleging was involved in this whole pandemic, which we know was a bunch of lies, and of course, what we should have been doing, we didn't do, and it did was a useful tool to get rid of Donald Trump, right, and bring
Right.
back in this horror show known as Joe Biden. So, you think the Catholic Church was involved in the spread of this pandemic, Mike?
Well, 5 years ago yesterday is when Pope Francis walked out into St. Peter's Square and said, you have to be scared. I'm closing the churches for 3 weeks. We have to lock the world down. There's a terrible disease out there. It's the first time in 500 years that the Catholic Church stopped regular mass. They didn't do it in the world wars, but they did it for that. And that was Pope Francis being the morality launderer that helped them set up this panic about this pandemic that led to all these illegal mail-in ballots, these compromised mail-in ballots that shifted the election for Joe Biden.
Right. And of course, the whole lie about the origins of COVID, the lie
Right.
about the effectiveness of the vaccine, the lie about the therapeutics, the lie about these mandates. I mean, we're still dealing with all that, as you say, 5 years ago. And it is sad to think that my church that I grew up in, that I
Right.
I worked for years, doing fundraising for Catholic organizations,
Right.
was involved in so much evil, Mike.
Right. Yeah, it's shocking.
Mhm.
We voted Trump in again. In November of 2024, we voted him in to stop it. They've already undermined the funding of the Catholic non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, the charities. They've taken that money away by removing it from USAID control. So there's hope. He's doing the right things. Trump came in and we made the right move on this, but we've got to get the word out to people and tell them there was a horrific evil that was done by the Democratic Party and the globalists through the Vatican. They got to get the CIA out of the Vatican.
All right. So in our final minute or so, let me ask you this. Pope Francis is hanging on. He's 88. I don't know how much longer he's going to be Pope, but is the fix already in for there to be another Pope like Pope Francis, another leftist globalist? Or can we get back to a Pope that can actually bring sanity and bring back the real focus of what the Catholic Church should be about, and that is saving souls?
Well, exactly. And so I write in the book about a guy named Parolin. Parolin's now Cardinal Parolin is now the Secretary of State. So he would be the next in line. A lot of people think he's going to be the guy. He can't be the guy. He's as criminal as Bergoglio and as McCarrick. He's all part of it. So we have to get an investigation into what the CIA and the Vatican did before the conclave comes, so that people know. The best way is get the word out. I'm trying to get the word out through the book, and thank you for having me on to tell people.
I want to thank you for your courage in writing these books. We're linking to your site there where people can go to. So what's the best place for people to go to get all your books, Mike?
You can get my books on Amazon. Amazon has an almost insurmountable evil, how the deep state defiled the Catholic Church and executed Wuhan pandemic, and also a case to impeach and imprison Joe Biden.
Mike McCormick, thanks so much. We look forward to visiting with you again very soon. And I want to thank the lovely and talented Annie Cyrus for her great work as our producer. I want to thank Jamie Glazov for the honor of hosting the Glazov Gang here this evening. And you can check out more about me at my website, and that is cruair.net. Until next time, thank all of you for joining us. And don't forget to support all the wonderful people here at the Glazov Gang. And go to jamieglazov.com to learn more about how you can support this fine program. We'll see you next time.
This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy, How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com.